What if your life stayed exactly the same as it is now? Would you be comfortable with that? Yes or no? To me, it's a definite no. In fact, it's more like no way, because there's so much more to my life and to my journey. So today, I'm going to share with you my mantra that keeps me on a more adventurous path, and it's called TAP. Think, act, persevere. Now, in martial arts class, when the pain of a technique being applied to you gets a little bit too much, we tap out like this, double tap. But today, I won't be doing any techniques on you. So what we've done is I've brought along a little visual support. This is a faucet. In South Africa, though, we would call this a tap. So in order for me to make you remember tap, I'm going to ask you to tap every time I show you this. So let's see if this is going to work. So let's tap. Right, that was really good. I think we've got this. Now, stories have been with us since time immemorial, and stories allow us to step into the shoes of someone else and experience their reality. I once literally got to step into someone else's shoes as part of a genetic counseling exercise. So I stepped into their shoes, and in turn, they got to step into mine. Needless to say, it was rather uncomfortable, but what a marvelous learning journey. So today, you and I become part of each other's story. So let's see where that takes us. So I was born on the tip of the African continent in the breathtakingly beautiful city of Cape Town, into a mixed race family. Now, when race is at the forefront of life, it often leads to pain and anguish. But yet, there is no shortage of beauty and creativity. So given my African heritage, there's going to be a lot of movement in this talk. So we got to tap, and now you get to raise your hands. So everybody raise their hands. Look at your hands. Look across the room. Look at the person next to you. What do you notice? Okay, you can put them down now. Now, this is exactly the same exercise that Nobel Peace Prize laureate, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, affectionately known as the Arch, did to a gathering in South Africa. And then he announced to them, "You are the rainbow people of God." And that's how South Africa became known as the Rainbow Nation. So I am a child of the Rainbow Nation. And it's perhaps not surprising that I am passionate about flowers. So when I grew up, our communities were split along racial lines. We could live together if we were the same skin color. So in my community, there were only mixed-race people. We were like a colorful garden of flowers. Sometimes, though, this was painful. And we had to find reasons to connect in our community. So I would often experience places where our life wasn't represented in the same way that it was in other contexts. There were no traditional costumes hanging in my wardrobe, because who knew what that was? Our tradition was largely wiped away by history. Our history and our heritage had been wiped away. So in order for me to connect with my heritage, I decided to volunteer. And volunteering is what gave me that connection with my community. It was community leaders also who inspired us to make changes and to find new hope. So my first volunteering experience was at a conference which included the Arch, because he was a part of our community. And that's where I got to have conversations with him. Interestingly, it was also the first time that I got to see Nelson Mandela. And I got to see these men engage with each other and debate issues, and it was amazing. It opened my eyes to community leadership. and made me realize that each of us have a role to play. These leaders led our country to a peaceful transition that very few could imagine was possible, made us realize that we each have a role to play in that. So good leaders create followers. Great leaders create other leaders. But great community-focused leaders increase the strength and connection in the community as well. These leaders embodied what it was to tap, to think, act, persevere. So as I've already said, I am passionate about flowers, and that's my happy place. I think Ferdinand the bull is my spirit animal, because I am quite happy to just sit and smell the flowers. When I'm out taking photographs and I'm stalking a hibiscus, I find it very comforting and a very softly rewarding experience. And what I try to do with my photography is to capture those moments and share those moments of joy with others. So I had the opportunity to display some of my artwork at an art trail in Sussex. And my first thought was, yes, let's do this. But shortly after that, doubt crept into my mind. Because when you are raised in a community that teaches you that you are not as worthy as others, that you are not as important as others, that negative self-talk is always lurking in the shadows. So what are the stories you tell yourself? What are the stories you tell yourself that make you take the actions that you take? So I got invited to this art trail, and I decided to do it. But I was telling myself all these negative things. Your art's not good enough. You don't really know how to use your camera. There will be professional artists there. You're just not able to compete. But thankfully, I took the challenge anyway, and I went to display my artwork. It was a sweltering hot day in Sussex, and if any of you had been to the UK, you know this is very unusual. We had attached our artwork with Velcro strips, and the glue on the Velcro strips was starting to melt. So there was artwork crashing all around me. Then someone stepped forward and said, "I'll buy that." And my day was made. The experience of having someone connect with your art was really so satisfying, and it renewed my energy to increase my practice and to start improving my photographic skills. So the thing was, though, that taking the action is what set my negative self-talk aside. Had I not taken the action, the negative self-talk would have won. So what are the stories you are telling yourself that are stopping you from taking your action? So I moved from South Africa to the UK and then to the USA. And in that time, there were a variety of communities that I was a part of, and so many stories to tell. And the stories that were important, that connected and engaged, were not always the big headline stories. Some of them were the interpersonal stories, things that had made a difference in people's lives. So one of my favorite stories from the UK is about a roe deer named Bambi, who was trapped on a barbed wire fence and got rescued. Then there was another story, a story in Dublin, about a schoolgirl who at just 12 years old had published her first book. There was another heartwarming story of a young boy who got to play his deceased dad's trumpet, thanks to a kind locksmith who unlocked the case for him and didn't charge the family. There was yet another story of really compassionate volunteers who, after the devastating California wildfires, went out to help the victims. So all of these stories are stories I got to interview people about. And I spoke to them about these stories, and I got to share them on hyperlocal news platforms. And what was special about these stories is that all of them came from someone in the community who stepped forward and raised their hand and said, I will take action. I will do something. So another story that's very close to my heart is that of the artists in Dublin. So I was invited to the Banquet Theatre in Livermore by a mixed media artist to see her first exhibition. And little did I know at that time that telling that story would lead to the formation of an arts collective. But it didn't happen overnight. Artists had already been building their community, had been creating beautiful artworks, and they had a solid body of beautiful creativity. But it took perseverance and it took time for them to reach their goals. They needed to put in all those actions. So the perseverance is what the key was. So here is an opportunity to remind us to tap. Think, act, persevere. All of those artists started creating for themselves, but now they are collectively nurturing the talent and creativity in others, which is an amazing thing to see. So, where does that leave you? What story are you telling yourself? And what path would you like to be on? There are no gatekeepers. Pollinators can fly to any bloom they choose. Some of us wait for the world to pick us. We'd like to go, I pick you, and I'll pick you, but I won't pick you. The beautiful thing is, we can pick ourselves. So you could pick yourself. You don't have to wait for the world to pick you. You are not a flower. So where does that leave us? What change are you seeking to make? Why are you here today? What is it that you want to do when you leave here? What it's going to take is for you to think about the change you are seeking to make, to take the action, and to persevere. So what you have to do is take your turn, tell your story, and tap. Thank you.